Stand back. There's a hurricane coming through.
The following contest is scheduled for one fall. Introducing first, from Raleigh, North Carolina, weighing 191 pounds, the Hurricane.
Day of Reckoning 2 showcases the foundation of pro wrestling games. Released in 2005, it's surprising how many maneuvers you can pull off, complete with limb damage, a varied submission system, and an all-new stamina gauge. Match styles feature staples like ladder, hardcore, Iron Man, but also has the long-gone bra and panties match. After each match, you're graded by criteria, including match finish to determine how much cash you win. You can then spend the cash in the WWE shop to buy arenas, costumes, and movesets. The latter two are helpful for story mode, where you'll create your own wrestler. You can also choose which attributes to fill and which skills to focus on. You won't get much for your stats early on, but it won't be long until you rack up enough experience points to mold a force to be reckoned with. In my case, I started out with 10 on Mount Wrestling, and it more than made up for my 0.5 stats in other areas, since I could redden my opponent's limbs with just a few submission holds. Thankfully, there's a steady incline in difficulty, and coming close to the Rumble, you'll find many lower card opponents are quick to counter. In terms of the story, your wrestler's already well established, with a resume that could be the envy of many current superstars. He's a former member of Evolution, a former world champion, and he's set to face Triple H in WrestleMania for a shot at the title. The story is driven by text, and occasionally you're able to choose one of two paths to see how you progress. This does add a bit of replayability, even if the story as a whole is rather far-fetched and fails to carry the momentum. It's a good thing that the gameplay is much better. In case you've forgotten the controls or you've never played, this game features a tutorial to teach you the basics of strikes and reversals, and more match-specific moves like breaking the cage of Hell in a Cell. You can then take a test to see how well you remember them. It's a shame that most wrestling games that follow didn't have this helpful feature. You have your basic strike and grapple, both with stronger variants if you hold the button. In the case of grappling, you lock, and it's your choice if you want to strike or go for a slam. Handling a downed opponent also offers robust controls, like flipping him over, dragging, and grappling that varies depending on whether you're standing close to the head, legs, or arms, and whether your opponent's facing up or down. Day of Reckoning 2 certainly surprises with the amount of nuances already present in how you're able to approach your opponent. Submissions let you control via the C-stick, whether you'd like to submit, taunt, drain, or rest hold, each with their unique effects on your opponent. If your opponent guesses correctly, then he immediately counters, breaking the hold. Even in tag teams, by holding the Z button coupled with a directional button, you can tell your partner what to do, whether you'd like him to attack the ref or your opponent on the opposite corner. The ref doesn't seem to mind your partner's constant run-ins, reminding that this wrestling game leans more toward arcade than realism. You can initiate a special taunt to dish out finishers. More established superstars like Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit have more ways than others to finish off opponents in various positions. The AI isn't the most ruthless, often taking seconds to stand over you when you're down, either figuring out his next move or sizing you up. Then again, opponents with higher stats counter and deal out damage as expected. Pinning an opponent can be confusing by today's standards. Instead of the familiar pin your opponent when he's red, the game also bases the pin on your momentum. When your momentum's red hot, you've got a higher chance of pinning your opponent, especially when his is blue. This can lead to 2-minute matches when you're steadily on the roll.
Stand back. There's a hurricane coming.
You can also pull off a momentum shift when you're in danger by pressing A and B together, putting you back in control of the match. Minor clippings aside, the visuals in Day of Reckoning 2 are still great, taking into account that this came out over a decade ago and was a massive step towards making pro wrestling games look and feel more like the actual product. The sounds unfortunately aren't so great. Wrestlers don't have voiceovers, and there's no match commentary. Instead, you get generic rock music that doesn't take long to sound even older. Day of Reckoning 2's fast-paced and robust gameplay still entertains, and it's impressive how developer Ukes provides us with a whole slew of options to wrestle. Playing this game in 2016, it's clear that Day of Reckoning 2 was essential in the progression of video game pro wrestling.